Get your swimsuits on. You'll be watching an interview about the Manitowish Water skiing Skeeters of the 1960s. The star of this show is ski boat driver Jerry Rayala. With him are two famous water ski gals, Kay Kranz, maiden name Casey Christensen, and Beth Dahlmeyer, maiden name Beth Williams. Interviewing them today, the 16th of December, 2020, is me, Janelle Cole, board member of the Manitowish Waters Historical Society. With all the lakes in Manitowish Waters, there's no doubt water skiing was, and still is, a popular activity. But what to do if you couldn't ski? How about watch those that could? And watch is what folks did. These water ski shows were very popular. And why is that? Well, you'll have to watch the video to learn how these young people put together quite the events at Rest Lake, participated in competitions, and brought Manitowish Waters to the forefront of the water ski sport. You'll be beaming with pride for our town when you finish.
Good afternoon, everyone. Actually, good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, December 9th. And I am here this morning to interview Kay Kranz, Jerry Rayala, and Beth Dahlmeyer about the skiing Skeeters back in the 1960s. They all had been skiing Skeeters. And on the table, you'll notice a jacket there. Casey, and that is Kay Kranz's jacket. Right there. And that's some nostalgia there. We will start with Jerry Rayala. Jerry has some notes to start the discussion about the skiing Skeeters. Thank you, Jerry.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and very happy to have Kay and Beth here to participate in this interview. And as mentioned, we're going back to the 1960 era with the skiing Skeeters. And I personally got involved, I think around 1963. And I became a boat driver after spending a short period of time as an observer in the boat, learning all of the tricks. My younger brother Marty became the announcer, and then there was everybody else, Beth and Casey and the whole troop of girls and guys that worked closely together to put on bi-weekly shows. And I believe we had them on Sunday and Wednesday throughout the summer. And it was a very interesting time, an exciting time for all of us. And I always thought about it as there was kind of like two groups of kids back then. There was the local kids, and then there was the summer residents. And us local kids, such as myself, we usually had full-time jobs. So we had to put in our 8 hours on our job, and then but we always were looking for something to do after work, and so the ski club was very appealing to us. And then for the other kids that were here for the summer, they were out there almost on a daily basis, I believe, skiing and getting practiced up for the various acts in the water ski club for the shows. And they had, for the most part, they had good equipment, they had good boats. And their parents were very supportive. They've supported the club in many ways, not only with allowing the kids to come with their own equipment and everything, but they supported the club very well financially. And so everything worked together well, and we think it was a very positive experience for the kids, and we think that the parents especially appreciated the club because it gave the kids something very constructive to do during the summers, and kind of kept them out of trouble in other ways. However, we did create enough of our own trouble and problems at times, but we can talk about that later. But anyway, it was a very unique learning experience for the kids, And many of the kids just became outstanding skiers and performers. And I think there was value for everybody that participated in the club. So I don't want to dominate the show here, or the discussion here, but we did say that we had 2 shows a week. They were held at the Skeeter Bowl, which at the time was on the Northern Lakes property, which was right close to the dam. The area that we skied in was very constrained, actually, because we were tucked into the bay right there. And everyone's probably familiar with Kohler Park, which is just across the bay from where we used to put on the shows. We used to have hundreds of spectators come. It was a major tourism attraction for the area. And we used to raise a lot of money. At an intermission, we'd have the girls go out with their buckets, and we would collect hundreds of dollars at each show. And that was sufficient to keep us in gas, and allowed us to purchase boats and motors and all the equipment that was needed, and to do promotion and advertising and so on. So there was a lot involved in putting the shows on and getting everything organized. And we had, I think they were really very exciting shows back then. I can remember, first of all, we had state-of-the-art boats and motors. We started out with twin 75 horsepower Evinrudes on a custom-made boat, which was made locally here by Ken Lyons, who actually has just lived right across the street here. And that was a state-of-the-art boat. It was very powerful. And back then, I think that was probably the largest motors on the market. And so then we went on from there with even bigger and better boats and motors. And just the show setting itself, you know, I can remember us starting the show with a bang every time. We'd either come through with a barefooter behind the boat, zooming right close in front of the docks, or we just come through with the boats, the show boat and the pickup boat, wide open, just a few feet off the dock, you know, to get the show started. So everybody got excited right from the get-go, and the shows were very fast-moving. We tried to keep them to less than an hour, and everything had to click. Everybody had to be there on time, with their act, with their ropes, with their skis, and ready to go. And we just moved from one act to the next, just within seconds of each other. So,
Was there an adult coordinating all of this, or was it all you kids? Teenagers, right?
it was all teenagers.
Yes,
Well,
it was all teenagers.
as far as the show went, the show night, we had a show director, which was one of the kids, you know, who kept it going, who made sure that one act, the next act, if an act was on the water, the next act was on the dock. And the next act after that was on the shore. So you'd keep moving, and you had to be ready just to change ropes and keep going, because we had only the showboat. Some things were done with the pickup boat, if it was just like the saucer or something.
So more slow moving.
With a slow moving one. And the difference, the showboat pulled the skiers. The pickup boat would be if an act fell, or if somebody, skis were dropped or anything, they'd have to make sure to get those skis out of the way, or the ropes out of the way, before the next act came. So it was very fast moving and very well coordinated.
And we didn't have, we weren't as safety conscious as we probably should have been. But we felt like when we were in costume, we didn't want to wear life jackets. So the only acts that wore life jackets were the jumpers and the barefooters. But so if you fell, you know, you better be able to tread water well. And the pickup boat was always on the skiers.
Behind the
that
act,
was
yep.
their job. So it worked out pretty well. Luckily, nobody hit their head.
Generally, teenager minds are not as cautious as the adults.
No.
It just because that's the way the mind works. And it's very impressive that all of you young people were doing all of this.
Well, and Janelle, I think something that's really important for like Beth and I. Now, Beth was a downhill skier, so she had that competitive ability to ski on the hills. But in those days, girls had no avenue for athletic competition. So in our era, here we are, young girls who are being looked at as, good skiers, and we're enjoying that feeling of athleticism, and also the concept of working together as an athletic group. And I think that was, before its time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What was really nice too is we were a group of different ages, of women and men, boys and girls, I guess at that time, but
Different socioeconomic group.
Right, from all over. And so it kind of broadened everyone's world, because you're talking to people who have gone away to college. We're in high school and we're thinking, whoa. And, brothers and smaller brothers and sisters, younger brothers and sisters. And so you kind of learned, you really felt as though you were part of not only a group that put on shows, but a group that really cared about one another. And I think it's
kind of a microcosm.
It is, and it made you feel like you belonged to something here that was worthwhile. And I think that's why so many of us have come back here. There was that feeling of belonging and loving where we were and the people we were with.
And Jerry, you said you lived here year-round. Well, every September I sat and cried in the back seat of the car all the way home, because this experience, I loved, where I lived and where I grew up, but this was my focus. Once I became involved in the North Woods, even from little girl on, this is where I wanted to be. And then the skiing Skeeters allowed us to become friends with so many different people, and those friendships have gone on for decades.
And I think one thing that was different then was that we stayed all summer. And so our mothers, maybe our parents, I was from Ironwood, so my dad drove back and forth. But kids would be up here with their moms, their dads might come in on the weekends. But we were invested here. That doesn't happen so much anymore, where you come and you live, and like Kay said, we came on Memorial Day, we left on Labor Day, and we weren't happy with leaving. It just made a difference.
That reminded me too, and Jerry, all of our mothers would come and watch us.
Every show.
And when our dads were here, they'd come too. But our parents got to know each other as well, which expanded their experience in the Northwoods in the summers.
Yeah, it united the community really in many ways. And as I said earlier, it provided just a major tourist attraction, because back then there just wasn't that much going on in the area. But then for the kids in the club, it was our social life. And so we all, we worked very hard, to put together, a class act, I believe. But we also played very hard. And so after the shows, we'd often go to a party someplace. And I think we all got introduced to beer and very early on. So I can remember parties that we would have out on Island Lake on islands, and or in a gravel pit someplace. But our favorite hangout after the ski shows was a local beer bar in Boulder Junction called the Broken Knuckle. So that was the hangout for the ski club, after the shows often, or usually. And
Ralph and June Christensen.
Yes, it was interesting because it was a little bar here and a little restaurant on the other side, and the kids that were 18 or older could go into the bar, and the younger kids had to stay in the restaurant. Well, we'd get our beer and then we'd go in and mingle with the younger group, and it was all pretty innocent for the most part, but we did
and
party
Amos
pretty hard.
Amos, yes. Remember Amos?
Amos sitting at the end?
Okay.
He always came in bibbed overalls
Yeah.
and tell him about his beer.
Oh, he would come in, have a beer, and he had to have a raw egg in his beer, and he'd do the whole thing at one time.
And everybody'd be, oh, look at that.
And then when he was done, he'd say, everything's copacetic.
Yeah,
Anyway,
life was good.
yeah, life was good.
Another thing that we had that was really fun is we sponsored a dance on Wednesday nights after the ski show. So after the ski show, well, hopefully this is one little story. Beth and I did the pyramid, and you tried to get your hair just right so that after the ski show, you could look really nice when you went to the dance. And so soon the boys on the bottom, the 3 boys on the bottom, figured out how funny it would be to make sure that when we came into the show course, they would flip us off the back end so we'd go into the drink, so that we'd have to struggle to get our hair fixed. But every Wednesday night we had a club meeting before the dance. And we probably had the meeting then so that we'd have to get through it so we could get to the dance. I'm not sure. Do you remember anything about the club meetings in that cottage?
Well, we had regular meetings just to discuss ongoing business and plan for the next events and so on. But we tried to keep them short and brief, and because everybody was chomping at the bit to get out there and go to the dance or go to the beer bar. So, it all seemed to work out well. We did have 2 senior advisors at one point. Forrest Johnson and Jake Scrobot served as our senior advisors. And they would stick their head in once in a while, but they really didn't interfere with our operations, and they just kind of gave it the stamp of approval for the adults and the parents of the kids, I think.
And the Northern Lights Resort was abandoned at the time, and we were given permission to use the property, but there was a cottage next to the big hotel, and that cottage is where we had our club meetings. So it was really kind of like a clubhouse. And then there was a dressing room for the girls and a dressing room for the boys and a big center room for us all to be together. And I can remember all that activity in there after the show, hair dryers going. We probably blew fuses right and left at one point. But just lots of camaraderie there too. I remember that.
I've seen some pictures of the group, a couple different kinds, or different photos. It was a large group of skiing Skeeters, and how was that? Was it difficult to coordinate who would get a turn, and making sure no one felt left out?
I think it's
a challenge.
It was amazing how many people we really needed to put on a show. There were those people who took care of the skis and the ropes and all the things that were needed, during the show. There were the boat drivers and observers. There were the skiers. There were younger group members who might come up with something. I remember Tommy Joseph on ping pong paddles. Well, you couldn't be very big and do that, So, I mean, they're very creative in the acts. And I think the way that the acts were decided, if I remember right, was we would have practices every week. Mm-hmm. And if an act just continued not to be successful, either someone else would be put in that place, or there'd be a lot of practice to make sure that we put on acts that were successful. So there was a lot of pressure, really, if you wanted to ski in the show. Like the ballet, there were 5 women, 5 girls. Pyramid was 5 people. Jumping was 3 barefooters. So there were a lot of people who could be involved, but it took commitment for each skier to make sure that they were doing their act well.
Well, and we had a 2-tier system. You either could join the club. How old did they have to be? 12, was it?
I believe it was 12, yes.
And you could join either as a working member or a skiing member. So if you didn't feel like a strong skier or you didn't think you could try out as a skiing member, you could join the club as a working member, and then you worked the ropes and worked the docks and put the equipment away. But you then had the opportunity to ski and learn from the other skiers, which I think was a really good concept.
Oh, we also had an announcer. You had mentioned Marty announced, who would, introduce the acts and keep the action going when things were happening or not happening the way they should.
And Marty had that personality where he could make it fun to listen to.
Very, very impressive.
And as a skiing member, you had to try out. They would ask you, can you do a deep water slalom start? And for me especially, we had I think a 25 horse on a wooden boat, so this boat did not go really too fast. And at the tryouts, it was a beautiful inboard.
Chris
Craft inboard. It was a gorgeous boat, but it was a little bit daunting to all of a sudden be skiing behind this very powerful boat after having to hang on half the lake in order to get out of the water with the boat, what you learn behind. So I think that was great. And the one thing you had said, everybody who skied was willing to teach whatever you wanted to learn. If you wanted to learn how to jump, they would help you with that. If you wanted to, if one act you thought, oh, I could be the backup for that one, saucer or something that someone had, Wendy Tillman did backwards skiing beautifully. She was an excellent skier. I don't think anyone ever took that one over, but there were different acts that you could learn how to do.
When you're talking about that Chris Craft, I learned, my brother was a skiing skeeter prior to me, so he's 6 years older. But he wasn't very patient with me when we were alone, and I remember wanting so badly to try out, and I couldn't take you had one of the criteria in order to be a skiing member is you had to make a deep water slalom start. And I remember on Alder Lake spending one afternoon like a drowned rat because my brother wouldn't let me out of the water until I was able to do that. And then I tried out behind the Fire Eyes and Chris Craft too. And all I can remember is I felt like I was in a tsunami as I was taking off because the Chris Craft waves were like, and I thought, oh my gosh, hang on. And I did make it up, which shocked me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with regard to who wound up in the show, actually, was the outstanding performers. And some of these kids had just worked very hard to come up with unique and special acts, as we talked about already. Some of the slalom skiers were just exceptional. We had one act, it was called a 360-degree turn around the boat, where it was coordination between the boat driver and the slalom skier, where that skier would actually make a full 360-degree swoop around the showboat. And there was only just a handful of people that could do that act.
You did that, didn't you, Beth?
No.
No, you never did
not that one.
There was different individuals were able to do it, but it's a very difficult act. We used to have a kite act.
Oh.
And I can remember Jim Kissinger took it upon himself to perfect that act. And that was really kind of a hazardous act. The equipment back then was kind of rudimentary. The kites were. Nothing like what you see today, and they were actually dangerous. And I used to kind of cringe as a boat driver pulling that act because he'd probably get up 80 to 100 feet in the air, and kites just do funny things, and every once in a while they would crash. They would just, for no reason, come smacking down into the water. And so we'd always have to release that kite so that he wouldn't slam into the water too hard. But I always cringed having to go back and pick him up out of the water, hoping he wasn't injured.
You know, Jerry, when you're talking about that, that was a lot of responsibility for you to be the boat driver. And tell us about kind of those.
Yeah, I mean, I always cringed a little bit, especially on the high-speed acts. And one of the other acts that was really kind of right on the edge was the clown acts.
Yeah.
And if you remember Jack Fire Eyes, they go through their little set routine, but his final part to the clown act would he'd do a cannonball off the ski jump, and we'd come at the jump wide open, and he'd get on the jump and kick his skis off, and then he'd just cannonball and land in the water. Well, I can tell you, on more than a couple occasions, I go back and for some reason the showboat would go back and pick him up. And he'd be hurting so bad he could hardly get in the boat. We have to help him in the boat. You know, it was just crazy stuff like that that some of these people did just to make a good show. And, you know, we talked about the Pyramid Act. That's pretty dangerous, too. If you fall from up on the top there, and we had a 3-level pyramid, I think, for the most part, that was pretty hairy. And then, of course, the barefooting. You're going at 35 miles an hour, and you hit the water at 35 miles an hour, and it hurts. And so we were famous for barefooting. We were called the Midwest
Barefoot capital.
Barefoot capital of the Midwest. We had some excellent barefoot skiers, and they were tough guys, and they could really.
And Wendy.
And Wendy, yes.
And girl.
She was probably one of the first female
Yep.
barefooters
Do you
in
recall
Wisconsin.
other barefooters? Any names to interject?
Oh,
Here's
almost everybody
here's a
in the.
picture of the
Yeah.
first, second, and third place winners of the barefoot
So Rick Ritter, Doug Barnkard, and Larry Rushmeyer were the first, second, and third in the first barefoot tournament,
Yeah,
state
Rick
barefoot
Ritter being
tournament.
one.
Yep.
But this was the first barefoot tournament in the country held in Manitowoc waters.
Yeah, and we should talk about that
Yes.
because the Skiing Skeeters, initiated a state barefoot tournament. The very first one. It was our idea. We had a local tournament going on for a couple of years prior, I believe. And then we got the idea that we should make this competitive, open it up to other individuals. And so, yes, we were the first one to start the state tournament. Now, I was doing a little research, and that has gone on to become a national tournament and also a world tournament.
Wow.
That's
where
really cool.
People from around the world participate in these barefoot contests. But I think it all started right here with the Skiing Skeeters, with first a local competition, we went to a state, and it's since gone on to a national and worldwide event.
With that said, I think about what other little towns in the area were doing for a ski show. Were they having a ski show, or was Manitowoc Waters, do you think, that lead group?
Well, Minocqua had the Minocqua bats.
Right.
But they're way bigger.
Oh, well. And they
At the
started.
time, I don't know that they were that much bigger.
No, I think we were very competitive with
Oh,
the
okay.
on the level of the
Yeah.
bats at that time.
And I think we were the only two prominent ski clubs in the area.
There were the Plum Skeeters, which are an older group.
They go
too.
back quite a ways. And then the Tomahawk Quahamets
Yeah.
go back quite a ways.
Yeah.
But there was just 4 or 5, I think, initially.
However, we went on to a show tournament in Wisconsin Rapids. And
Right.
what year was that?
The first Wisconsin,
The first Wisconsin
State
Rapids
water ski-
State
Water
Water
Ski
Ski
Show
Show
Tournament.
Tournament.
Yeah, that was back in 1967.
And we came back with first place.
Yeah. And we had the documentation. That tournament continues on to this day. And I have to take some kudos here because that tournament was my idea initially.
Oh, good for
Awesome.
you.
Yeah. I was a member of the Wisconsin Water Ski Federation. In fact, I was a vice president. And this was back in 1966 when our club was really coming into its own, and we had excellent performers and everything else that was required to put together an outstanding show. And I think I got a little cocky. And I said, we ought to have a show tournament to let the different clubs around the state compete. And so I worked with Jack Lucas, who was the president of the Wisconsin Water Ski Federation at the time, and we kind of put our ideas together. And lo and behold, in 1967, we had the first state water ski show tournament. And so the Skiing Skeeters were there, proud and
yeah.
happy to perform. And we did win that tournament. So that's a feather in the cap of the club. And when you go back and look at the pictures even, in 1967, everything looks, we had outstanding boats and motors.
Did we have good-looking
Here's
swimsuits?
some
good swimsuits
pictures
and
of,
just,
different acts.
outstanding. There's one picture in there of the club in 1967.
Which one is?
Yeah, it's right at the beginning. This one here, and if you look at
Oh, we
that
had
picture,
decent suits, too.
it just shows, I think, the glamour of the club at the time.
And there's Beth,
And Kay
Yeah.
and there's Kay.
and
And
Jerry
Jerry.
in the boat.
And Jerry.
Uh-huh,
Where are you in the boat? Jerry?
Right there.
right there.
Yeah.
Oh, on the top row.
Yeah, my brother Marty was the announcer at the time.
Oh my.
Anyway, this show tournament continues on today, as indicated, and it's become a huge event. They have like 28 teams that participate. They draw crowds of 20 to 30,000 people. It's just a major event for the Wisconsin Rapids area. I think it's routinely held in that area. It's sponsored by the Aqua Skiers of Wisconsin Rapids.
And that
And-
was on the Wisconsin River that we skied, wasn't
At
it?
the time, yeah. I
Yeah.
think they may have shifted the location a little bit, but it's still a major event, and it was started right here with the Skeeters.
What was the format? I do not remember. Did we have a selected number of acts that each group did, or
I think
how?
so.
I think we just went down with our regular
With the
show
regular show?
routine, and
There were doubles and
yeah.
the ballet and
So the judging in the early years, probably was very subjective, I would think. But they looked at the boat drivers, they looked at the announcers, they looked at everything that it took to put together a show, and did their best at judging. And I'm sure they've gotten a lot more sophisticated. And I've seen, if you look at the pictures and some, it's unbelievable what that tournament does to this day. I mean, I see pictures with like 20 skiers out in a
Behind a
With the
boat, because
power.
they can now.
The
yeah, because
increase
they
in
have
power.
these huge boats and motors.
Well, do you remember trying to get up on the pyramid? At least there was a bar, but
Yeah,
let's say
the
the ballet, with trying to pull up 5 people.
yeah.
It took a while to get everybody, up and out of the water. And
So on the ballet, we started out on two skis
skis.
off the dock.
Yeah.
So we're all in a line. But the ropes, if you were at the far side from the end of the dock, you might have a little more of a jolt. But then
And if you're in the middle, you have people coming in towards you. I mean,
like, move out.
yeah.
And
but
then once you drop a ski, you got to make sure those skis drop in a synchronized fashion.
so they can pick them all up instead of 5 in whatever place.
And then if somebody drops, then the observer in the boat's got to quick pull the rope out so that it's not knocking across everybody. And it was
It was fun. And we
It was.
really, I think we really worked hard at what we were doing,
Yeah.
and it was a lot of fun, and we had a lot of pride, I think,
Yes.
in what we did.
Yeah.
Oh, it boggles my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
not a swimmer, much less a water skier. And the things that you've talked about or what you did is, to me, sounds very dangerous. But
I think we were pretty
careful.
safety
I think we
conscious.
were really careful.
Yeah.
Those pickup boats, when you fell, that pickup boat was on
Right
you.
there.
And we talked about that earlier. There was always some injuries, relatively minor, but we didn't have any major catastrophes, either on the water or, with the kids afterwards driving while drinking or something like that. So we maybe dodged a bullet, but I don't think there was any deaths, because of
behavior.
behavior or serious injuries even.
very impressive and
Yeah.
so much to be proud of. And you have more notes there, Jerry?
Well, I was just looking. I think I've covered most of the stuff I have on here. I think we all have fond memories. It was an excellent learning experience for the kids. It gave them responsibilities that I think they're life lifetime experiences that provided benefit throughout their lives. Time management was a big thing. You had to be at the show at the right time. You had to be on the dock at the right minute. And so there was a lot of qualities that came into play here. Teamwork, of course. We had a real strong sense of esprit de corps. Everybody worked as a team. You had to work together. And, physical training. Everybody was so many of the skiers was just in outstanding condition. Even the girls. You pull Wendy Fire Eyes behind her showboat, and she pulled like a
Here she is slalom
man.
skiing, and here she is
Yeah.
barefooting. But look at the spray that she created in those old days on those old wooden skis.
It's just amazing.
And plus, she always looked so graceful doing it
Right.
too.
Yeah.
I mean, she was just a premier, really an athlete now.
Very,
she
very
was.
much so. And another really strong athlete was Dottie Sharmer Lee.
Yep.
Dottie was a gymnast. She was a Milwaukee Turner, and she was in the offing to be on the Olympic gymnastics team in the 60s. But she had a bar. She had her dad probably put that together. She had a bar act where there would be two boys holding the bar, and she would be not on skis, and she'd be doing all kinds of acrobatics on that bar on the water. And that was really impressive. Another really good athlete, female athlete, was Beth. Beth did the canoe paddle. And Beth, tell us how you learned that and how that act worked.
Well, originally it was Betty Wangard and Clark Wangard who
Were
did
the
it.
canoe paddle people?
And as they, Betty was a little bit older. Clark, I don't know, was in other acts. I decided I'd like to learn the canoe paddle, and it was sort of like you said. We spent the day on the lake, and by the end of the day, I would be totally drowned. But was able to do it, and that was a lot of pride in being able to learn that.
That was a
act.
really
It was
highlighted act.
Introduced as the slippery, shiny canoe paddle, because that's all you had between you and the water. And so it was fun. It was those kinds of things that really, I think, just gave you the confidence, to be a part of the group and it was so much fun to learn. Like I said, anybody would teach anyone else how to do whatever they wanted to learn.
And I remember learning when we did the ballet. We put at one pass we had the ski rope between our thighs so that we could just be standing and waving. And then another time we came through on one ski, and we had the heel hold. So we had the
rope around
our heel, so one leg would be up. And you've got 5 girls trying to get that all arranged without falling, and it was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my! And Jerry, you were the driver,
I was.
and there was a first time.
Oh,
There was a first time when you got behind the wheel of a boat. Could you tell me about that and how your skills may have developed and how old were you when you drove? No one's going to come after you anymore if you're 5 years old.
Yeah, no. I served as the observer in the boat just to kind of get the feel of everything initially. And so, gosh, as far as how old I was probably in my early 20s. And yes, it's quite challenging because the boats are very powerful. I talked about the first boat that we had was actually an overpowered boat for the size of the boat, because when you take off, it almost jump out of the water. And you had to be careful because your observer, you had to make sure that they were hanging on.
Did it have dual controls?
Yes.
I mean, did you on that boat? Did you
Yeah,
have to
you
do
had
them
2
separately?
controls.
Because that was not.
That's
That was
another
way
thing.
before you could put motors together and control them with
Yeah,
one.
yeah. So it was very innovative. I mean, you didn't see boat rigs like that very often, and so that in itself was an attraction for people just to be able to see high-powered boat rigs like that. And yes, very challenging in many ways, and very nerve-wracking because you're always worried about you know, slipping up, causing an injury, or making a mistake. And fortunately, I did have one boat accident one time during a practice where
We were behind that boat.
yeah, and a boat, well, that original boat we had, the front end hung up so high when we were doing the slow axle, you had a blind spot. And somehow a little fishing boat with 3 kids got in that blind spot, and we went right over the top of them. And one boy was injured, had to be taken to the hospital, but fortunately he was not injured seriously. He just had a superficial wound, I believe. So
But that was an issue with the ski bowl, because if you picture the old Northern Lights, when you made that
Yeah.
curve,
a very tight, confined area that we were operating
That was true. You know, you'd go through, and as
curve
you're
was by the
coming
dam.
through the show course, you were going straight, and everybody's waving, and everything was fine. Well, immediately now you're headed kind of toward the dam in Kohler Park, and
Yeah.
so there had to be a pretty steep turn to get around and come back around, no matter what your act was.
Yeah, the high-speed acts made that a very challenging location because you'd
Yes.
have to do the jumping, for example, and then immediately turn because you're up against the shore.
Didn't people know to stay off the lake when it was?
Well, it was
Well,
marked, wasn't it, Jerry?
I was going to mention that.
Yeah.
Most of the time, people were courteous and they'd stay back far enough. But like over the 4th of July, I can remember just literally
how scary
weaving
that was.
in between boats trying to perform for the show. It was,
and that particular day that we were having practice, I believe that we had told that boat to stay out, and it was out, and it just like appeared right as, you know, it was like right at the right moment it came in, and
Yeah,
it never
just
should
got
have
in a
been there.
blind spot. And so anyway, but overall, we all survived, and there was nothing major in the way of injuries or deaths, which we're all thankful for.
You know, getting back to the state barefoot tournament, I'll never forget the first year. They opened up the old Northern Lights Hotel for us to use to serve food. Do you remember that?
For the concessions.
For the
yeah.
concessions. And the DNR brought us, I don't know, 100 pounds of venison
Of
burger.
venison to serve.
So that didn't cost anything for us, so everything was profit. But here we are frying venison burgers. We were so
this
excited because they
old
turned out
stove.
really,
Yeah,
really
they
good.
were good.
And, but as a historical note, when that building was opened, it was still all furnished with wicker furniture. It was just pristine. It was such a beautiful
beautiful.
building. So that was very cool that we got to go inside. And, I mean, it was left with its dishes and furniture. And,
It's a shame that it had to be eventually torn down, you know, because it was a very wonderful setting.
it was a classic.
And
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I was going to change the subject. So.
Oh, I was going to too. Jerry had mentioned that in our intermission, all the Skeeterettes would go through the crowd with a bucket to get money, really, to fund what we were doing. And I was the treasurer at one time, and you know, you think of it in today's world and whatever, but it was mostly quarters. It was mostly, there were a few dollars, but it was mostly change. People would throw the change in there. And yet we still were able, because of the number of people there, to fund the fuel.
Yeah, I remember
And
some nights
equipment.
$300.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
In that time, and you know, in that
That was
time,
a lot
that
of
was
money, right
like,
there.
whoa!
Yeah.
People were so generous.
That bowl was just a perfect place to have it too.
yes, yeah.
Because people would be sitting on the hill, and you could come in fairly close to the
Yes.
dock, which
Yeah.
was either good or bad. I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
And I
So
also
there was
remember,
advantages of that location over
Yes,
where
yes.
we currently operate
Yeah.
because we had the nice hill and people could layer themselves and
Yeah.
have a nice view of the whole show.
Well, and it some of the acts too. It was really dramatic, like the what I'm trying to think of what was the barefoot where you came off the
Oh, on your back.
on your
Back.
on your back.
They
You
called
just
it a
slide
beach start.
beach start,
barefoot.
beach barefoot start, and you'd have the flying dock starts, and you'd have some of the starting was just as dramatic as whatever the act was to just provide some drama, but it was nice because the crowd could see all of these things.
And another testament to teenagers was we talked about how we behaved as far as how we looked during the show, but also when we were going around collecting money, we kind of had a little routine and a little, oh, we're so glad you're here, and we're really trying to use proper etiquette and appreciate who was there, because that was the lifeblood of our show.
That was how we were able to do it.
We'd also put a girl or two in the showboat and then go around to the boats that were out in the bay. And so everybody was usually quite generous. And
It had to be a top performance that people would come see, that we're staying in cabins for a week. And,
Yep.
And that, I think that kind of led to the jacket being such a prize. Was you'd have the girls go through and wearing their Skeeter jackets, and
of course,
and you'd see
you were very proud
to wear that jacket wherever you went, with the patches and the kind of was part of that professional look, I think.
Outstanding members.
There's
of
the Wisconsin
community.
Rapids patch.
And popular.
I don't know about that, but yeah.
And then the dances always were live bands. I don't know if we had the same band every week. I can't remember. At the community center.
Yep.
So that
we'd get
were busy.
very large crowds, actually.
We did,
It was
and
a
like
very popular
we
event.
had. I remember too. The YCC boys would come and see the shows. You'd see that group of young men come to the shows. I don't remember them at the
I don't think
dances.
they came to the dances.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So what years were you each in the skiing Skeeters? Do you remember?
No,
I think
high
I
school.
was involved about 1963. It was when I started my involvement. I was president from 1965 to 1967 for 3 years. And then I was drafted in 1968. So then I was off to Vietnam. And so that kind of changed my perspective on life.
Yeah, Frankie too.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah, there was,
16, I think.
yeah.
Were you 15? 1963.
Well, let me think. When I was 15.
1964. 64.
So I must have been a little bit younger.
She is a little bit younger.
And I always will be younger.
It started in 63?
No.
The club had been in operation for a number of years prior.
Would
and
you
I
say
think
1960 was the first real?
I think there was some early beginnings actually in the late 50s.
The boat club.
But then it was the early 60s when it really kind of took off and got organized and had the regular shows. And
There was a boat club, Manchester Waters Boat Club, prior to the ski club. And I believe John Hansen was a member of that.
Do you think, though, that was because the boating equipment changed, and so we were able to do more with the equipment we had?
yeah, that was all part of it.
It was all part of it. Water
was
skiing
becoming
became popular
you know,
and-
nationwide at the time because the motors were had much more horsepower, and you were able to do this, and everybody's out there trying new things and trying new tricks, and so one thing led to the next, and then pretty soon we had water ski shows.
Yeah.
I remember when a
Demonstrating
35
the best.
horsepower was a big
Big
deal.
motor.
Yes.
That was
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we had the 75 horsepower Evinrudes, two of them on a single boat, I think those were the biggest motors at the time.
Yeah.
So I mean, people would come just to see the boats and the equipment, I believe.
Somebody we need to remember is Ray Smith
Yes.
from Ironwood,
Yes.
because he had a sporting goods store, and he made sure we had
Yeah.
Good motors.
good motors.
Yes.
Yes.
And I don't think we ever paid for any of those motors. I think they were donated, and then
We got a significant break on the price
On the
because
price, yeah.
back then the outboard motor companies were very interested in having the water ski clubs, use their equipment because it was such a promotional thing for them. We started out with the 2 Evinrudes from Ray Smith, and he provided wonderful service for us. And then we worked with Earl Snell from
Okay.
the local sports shop, and he was a Mercury dealer, and so then we got the twin 95 horsepower Mercuries.
Was that on the Ski Nautique?
That was actually on the
On the
Lion
same,
boat
okay.
initially, but then in 1967, I think, is when we got the Crosby ski boat, a boat designed to handle that kind of horsepower. And so things are a little safer.
It was weighted differently too, so it
they
didn't,
were
when it
designed
didn't
to
pull
handle
up,
it.
it stayed flat when
There were
you were.
special design boats for water skiing, with twin rigs like that.
And did Ray Smith also provide the pickup boats? Where did we get the pickup boats?
The pickup boats often were just family members' boats. But we did buy a boat later on, and I forget how that all transpired. But
and then all the equipment that we had. We had
Yes.
beautiful equipment.
yeah,
And,
Skis.
remember the Paul Bunyan skis?
Yeah.
You could ski like 3 people on the skis. They have bindings for like 3 people.
I think 5, but
5?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. The other thing, we had parents with the audio equipment. So the announcer had a microphone and there were speakers that had been put
Yeah.
in there. I don't remember which.
we did own the speaker system, and we had a light system.
Light
We
system,
had,
yeah.
I think there was 3 tall light poles with lights that would beam out. Later in the summer, we'd be running into evening darkness during the shows, and so the lights were very helpful. And we had the speakers up on a couple of the poles too. So back in the day, it was pretty well set up for.
And we announced in the beginning of the show, everybody's name was announced and where they were from. And so you'd have Beth Williams from Ironwood, Michigan, Jerry Rayala from Manitowish Waters, Casey Christensen from Wauwatosa, Wisconsin.
So we sounded really special coming out onto the dock,
Now, are you able to look at the couple pictures of the team and perhaps
Take that off.
try to recognize some of them?
Sure. Yep. This on.
We were talking
And
about
say,
that. We
some whatever they added to the group, what they did for the group, and I think the viewers would be interested to hear maybe their name or somebody they knew. If it's possible, if you're able to do that, go through. the
I'm
pictures
looking for that picture that you, here, this one.
Yeah. We can name most of the
Most
people
of
in
them,
there, I believe.
sure. Okay, should we start with the back?
Sure.
Okay. Right here, Bobby Kovar,
Bob Kovar.
Bob Kovar, Terry Nerby, Tom Joseph, I have no idea.
I don't remember his name either.
Do you?
I got to get my glasses.
This is Mike
Mike
Johnson.
Are you able to tell what they did,
Oh,
or do you recall, or not really?
well, we can, let's see.
Some of them did multiple things,
Yeah.
and then
okay.
would change.
What did Terry do? Did he ski
Terry
on his belly or
jumped.
back? But he
Yeah,
did
he-
this
he did
one.
a couple
Oh,
different
on his
things.
elbows and
Elbows and
knees.
knees.
Terry did. And Tommy Joseph did the ping pong paddle,
Yes.
mostly. Mike Johnson, was he on the server in the pickup boat?
Yeah, he did. I don't
He
think
did all
skied.
sorts of things,
Yeah.
to help.
Let's see.
Pat Brandt, did he do
He did the
saucer?
tall
Oh,
saucer, the tall.
Yeah.
a stool with standing on a
Yes,
stool on a
there's a picture
saucer?
of him doing that in there. I think.
Okay. Let's see. Ron Jones,
Ronnie Jones. I don't
I
remember
think
what
he
he did.
he didn't
Yeah, I'm
ski
not
much.
sure. I don't think he skied much.
No. Frank Kohler was in both the
He was the
main
observer.
boat, observer.
For me in the boat.
Clark Wangard could do anything.
Super athlete.
Yeah.
Jumper.
Jumper, canoe paddle,
Barefooter.
barefooter. He really
Slalom.
Slalom, yep. Jim Friedley. He was pretty young at
Yeah,
that
he was
point.
pretty young. And I think he was, these all-purpose guys
All-purpose,
too.
yeah. And Kim Friedley the same. He could barefoot, he could jump, he
Yeah.
could do just
He was a
anything.
trick skier too, wasn't
Tricks,
he?
yes. He and
did beautiful
Larry
tricks.
Rushmere
Yeah.
did trick skis.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Oh,
problem
okay.
is if they were a lot younger, like a year or more, we didn't pay any attention to them. I'm kidding, but okay. This is Debbie Kovar,
Debbie Joseph.
Debbie Joseph, and she was well. We're talking only about a few years where
Yeah, Debbie was so much
Debbie
younger.
was younger again. And this is a Johnson, but we don't know her name.
No, that's, oh yeah, you're right.
Mike's sister.
Mike's sister, yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking then there, and Lori Nervy.
Lori Nervy, and she could do anything. She did doubles. She did that bar act. She did the saucer,
Sauce headstand.
headstand.
on the
She
saucer.
did the ballet.
Yeah.
And
Pyramid too.
pyramid sometimes. Okay, Doris Worm.
Yep.
Okay.
Did she ski?
She might have done the ballet.
Yeah.
Okay. Monica
Jones.
Jones.
Monica Jones. Yeah.
I don't remember.
Mary Perkins.
She was pyramid.
Pyramid.
Nancy Kovar.
Mary Brunner, right?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mary Brunner Perkins. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably ballet.
Okay. Nancy Kovar, the ballet. Casey Christensen, and Pyramid Ballet.
Yeah. Let's see.
Karen Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
I don't know what she did.
Ballet.
Ballet, and then me. I did ballet.
Beth Williams.
Oh yes, ballet and pyramid and canoe paddle. Sometimes slalom. And so the people we were missing that weren't in that picture.
Who's sitting down?
Jerry
Oh,
Rayala,
Jerry
the
Rayala, I'm
voice.
sorry. And Marty Rayala.
the announcer.
Yes.
Is Frank in there? Frank Cole?
No, he's
No.
not in that one.
We're missing so many.
Let's see. Here we
Here we have more.
and here we have.
Here's like Wendy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wendy Tillman,
Yeah.
Fireheisen.
And she barefooted, she jumped, she did a slalom, beautiful slalom. She'd ski backwards if that, it's hard to picture, but she'd start out backwards and and do a kind of a swan. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
This is Susie Held. She would have maybe done ballet.
Ballet. That's you again.
Me again. Here is what was her name?
Coffee. Longacre.
Longacre. Anne Longacre.
Jane Longacre.
Jane Longacre. Yeah. And here is Doug Barncard
From Mercer.
from Mercer. And he
was
would
a
have done
barefooter-
jumping.
Barefooter and jumper. Tough guy.
Okay, and Jim Ransom.
He did doubles.
Doubles, yes. Will Byram, he did just about everything.
Good
Jumping, skiing, or
That's probably why his
barefooting.
back has bothered him all these years.
John Patton, he did slalom. And he had that hydrofoil. Do you remember that thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's right.
That came up out of the water. That was kind of a fun thing. Here's Frankie Kohler, and he, we already talked about him. Here's Jim Kissinger. Was the kite
Yeah,
guy.
Did some barefooting, I think, too.
Yeah, he was a pretty good barefooter. and then Joan Dobbins-Beck and
Byram, Joan Dobbins-Beck Byram today.
she did a ballet. Sue Bradley did ballet, and
Did she ski on shoe skis? Or did she do another act? I can't remember, but
I can't either. Judy Bazo did ballet. Linda Miller, ballet. Jody Brunner, she did ballet, and at one time she did that welcome where she had the ski kind of draped across the front of her that had welcome painted on it before the ballet. Let's see. I think that pretty much covers everybody here. Oh, Barb Scrobot.
Oh yeah, Barb was ballet.
Ballet. And here's Lori again, and I think
So that was
yeah.
quite a
Here's
group. Christy Ferris in any of those pictures?
yeah. I was just looking.
And her brother.
Ted.
Ted Ferris.
No, I think Ted left kind of.
Let me show you.
Here's no. Let's see. There's nobody. This is just a little different. I have no idea who that is. Do you?
That's Warren Senberg.
Oh, Warren.
Sandberg.
Warren would kind of help out around the with the ropes and things, and just be there.
So the group tolerated. He was mentally challenged, and but back in the day, we tried to make him feel part of the group.
Very nice.
I want to show you a picture of. Here's a picture of barefoot champions.
Very nice.
And I can't see if you can see. I don't want to say it wrong. Is Ted Ferris in that one? Because he's on one of those pictures.
No, this is Clark
Clark?
Wangard, Tommy Joseph, Rick Ritter, and Larry Rushmeyer. And these two I think are from other clubs.
Okay, and then
Here we go. Here's
Here's-
Ted Ferris.
Ted Ferris, Larry Rushmeyer, Rick Ritter,
Tommy Joseph.
Tommy Joseph. Do you think that's a Doug Barncard?
I think it might be.
Yeah, and in those years, they were the state champions, or the Skeeters were the state champions, and then we had individual winners, individual trophies as shown in the photos here. Very competitive group. In 1967, we were the state barefoot tournament champions. We were the state water ski show tournament winners, and then we had a few individual Midwest winners for competitive skiing in slalom tricks or in jumping. And I don't remember the names, but I know we had 2 or 3 at least Midwest champions in the club at the time.
Boy, this is all very impressive, and I'm sure all of the experience you've gained by being in the skiing Skeeters helped you develop as adults.
A lot of
Lifetime
skills.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
And I think also meeting people from different places as teenagers, you weren't still in your same group of kids that you grew up with. You're meeting, and it was a very enlightening and invitation to a bigger world. And one little aside, you don't participate in this, but forever, whenever we would see other girls that had skied with us, say that we had gone to Greer's Pier or something, we'd all, it's so silly, we'd all get in a line, put our arms around each other, and put our knees up like we were still skiing in the ballet.
Yeah, it's been some years, and I'm sure you've seen changes on and off over the years, just depending on who can be in the group and what kind of boats there are, so, all kinds of factors, and to have the skiing Skeeters still here says a lot about what
That
you all
does,
did.
really, that has continued through the years.
And things have changed, and it still is going. You know, you don't have the summer people like we used to, you don't have mothers coming up here and the kids staying all summer. They're so involved in team sports and things, they don't spend their summers. And I think it's unfortunate because it was such a great experience.
I think one thing that maybe had something to do with the quality of the show that we had and everything else was that our time was not separated. You know, we mostly skied. We were here to ski, and we worked.
We had part-time jobs,
Yes.
right?
And so, but skiing was the main focus. There wasn't that, you know, you didn't sit down on the computer and do whatever. You were outdoors and doing these things. And so I think we had more time to focus on the quality of what we were doing. And it showed, and the pride we had in what we did.
Is there anything anyone would like to add yet before we end the
Well, I think it was a
interview?
lifeline for the kids, especially, but then also for the community because at the time it was a major tourist attraction. And I think it brought out hundreds of people every week to see the shows, and I think it was a great experience all the way around.
Yeah, it was pretty daunting when you saw those people on the hill. You know,
Yes.
they came. They're going to watch us.
So thank you all very much. I know viewers will be very entertained by everything you have added and learn a lot. I sure have. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.